Hey, what's up? So before this starts, I have some news about the channel. We're moving to 2 videos uploaded each month, so yeah, double the content, woo! And we have something in the work for at 1,000 subscribers, and if we can hit it within this next year, so 12 months from now, we will roll out a new series on the channel, something very unique and creative that Nash has come up with. And if you would like to see that, go and hit the subscribe button and the like button. It really helps. And with all that said, let's get right into the gameplay, shall we? This time, Nash is piloting Mishra, an artifact combo deck that takes advantage of some very unique stacks pieces. He opened with Verdant Catacombs, Polluted Delta, Riddlesmith, Foundry Inspector, Dak Baden, Mystic Forge, and Blood Funnel. Colin is piloting Deekah, Fractal Theorist, a Turns list. He opened with an Island, a Chromox, a Grim Monolith, a Basalt Monolith, a Cursed Totem, a Reliquary Tower, and a Time Stretch. Jordan is piloting Gnostro, Voice of the Craigs, a Jeskai Storm list. He opened with an Island, a Spectator Seeding, Expedite, Felwar Stone, Brainstorm, Jeska's Will, and a Rape Shot. Ryan is piloting Tameshi, Reality Architect, a white-blue bounce control deck. He opened with a Treasure Vault, Island, Personal Tutor, Ponder, Muddle the Mixture, and Smothering Tide. Nash won the dice roll and decided to go first. He starts his turn off by playing a Verdant Catacombs and passing. Colin plays an Island as land for turn and passes. Jordan does the same and passes. Ryan also starts his turn off with an Island as land for turn. He follows this up with a Ponder, choosing to shuffle and then passes the turn. Nash responds by tutoring with his Verdant Catacomb, getting an Underground Seas into play tapped. Nash starts his turn off by playing a Polluted Delta as his land for turn. He then cracks this, getting a Volcanic Island into play. He then casts Riddlesmith and then passes the turn. Colin starts his turn off by playing a Reliquary Tower, and then he taps out in order to play Grim Monolith. On EOT, Jordan plays a Brainstorm. Jordan starts his turn off by playing a Spectator Seeding as his land for turn. He then plays Gitaxian Probe for 2 life, targeting Colin. He finishes his turn by playing an Arcane Signet and passing. Ryan starts his turn off by playing Tundra as his land for turn. He follows this up with a Personal Tutor, putting a Fabricate on the top of his deck. Nash starts his turn off with a Mana Confluence. He then taps out in order to cast his Foundry Inspector. On Colin's turn, he taps out in order to play Deekah, Fractal Theorist, and he passes the turn. On Jordan's turn, he casts Jeska's Will, creating 6 red. He uses 2 of it for a Boros Signet and another 2 for a Felwar Stone. He taps Felwar Stone for a blue and casts Rhystic Study, passing the turn. On Ryan's turn, he plays an Island as his land for turn, and then taps out to transmute his Muddle the Mixture for a copy artifact. On Nash's turn, he plays a Soul Guide Lantern. On Colin's turn, he plays a Chromox and imprints a Time Warp onto it. He then passes the turn. Jordan starts his turn off by casting his commander. He then casts a Expedite on his commander and taps it in order to get a Scry. He then plays Hollowed Fountain as his land for turn and passes. Ryan starts his turn off by playing Scalding Tarn as his land for turn. He cracks the Scalding Tarn in order to get a basic island. He then casts Fabricate, getting to hand a Ancient Den. On EOT, Nash cracks his Soul Guide Lantern in order to get a draw. Nash starts his turn off by playing a land for turn, being Urza's Saga. He then casts a Dak Faden, stealing the Arcane Signet from Jordan. And he finishes his turn off by declaring attacks with both his creatures into Ryan for 5 damage. On Colin's turn, he plays a Cursed Totem and then passes. On Jordan's turn, he plays a Smothering Tide, and Colin responds by exiling a card to free cast a Forcing Negation, countering the Smothering Tide. On Ryan's turn, he plays Ancient Den as his land for turn, and then casts Copy Artifact, creating a copy of the Ancient Den. He then casts Mystic Remora and passes. Nash starts the turn off by playing an Academy of Ruins as his land for turn. Colin, not having enough mana to do anything, passes. On Jordan's turn, he plays an Arid Mesa as his land for turn, and then passes the turn. Ryan starts his turn off by paying the cumulative upkeep on Mystic Remora. He then casts a Smothering Tide, plays a Treasure Vault, and moves to end step. On end step, Colin single targets a Cyclonic Rift on Smothering Tide. Nash responds to this by making a construct with his Urza Saga. On the start of Nash's turn, Urza Saga triggers to get a Saga counter, and he responds by making another construct. He then tutors for Sensei's Divining Top into play. He then plays Ancient Tomb as his land for turn, and passes. On Colin's turn, he plays a Basalt Monolith, and passes. On Jordan's turn, he plays a tapped Steam Vents as his land for turn, and passes. On Ryan's turn, he pays the Mystic Remora's cumulative upkeep. He then follows this up by playing a Polluted Delta as his land for turn. He then taps down in order to play Smothering Tide. Jordan responds by casting a Mana Drain. Ryan then cracks his Polluted Delta for an island and casts Flusterstorm, countering the Mana Drain. Nash starts his turn off by playing Misty Rainforest as his land for turn. He then moves to combat and attacks Ryan for 5. On Colin's turn, he does not pay the 2, giving Ryan a treasure, and spends all his mana in order to cast a God Eternal Kefnet. On Jordan's turn, he starts things off by playing Misty Rainforest as his land for turn. He cracks it, getting a basic island into play, and then passes. Ryan pays for the Remora, and then Ryan starts things off with Darksteel Citadel as his land for turn, and then casts his commander, Tameshi, Reality Architect. He then passes. On Nash's turn, he plays an Inventor's Fair and passes. On Colin's turn, he draws, pays his taxes, and then moves to combat, swinging with God Eternal Kefnet at Ryan. On Jordan's turn, he draws, pays his taxes, and passes. On EOT, Ryan plays Geist Wave, bouncing his own Mystic Remora, getting 2 draws. On Ryan's turn, he plays a Plains as his land for turn, and then attempts to cast Tidespout Tyrant. Colin responds by playing Opt. On Nash's turn, he plays a Dockside Extortionist, and cracks his Misty Rainforest for an Underground Sea. He then casts a Blasphemous Act, followed by a Mystic Forge, and passes. On Colin's turn, he plays a Soul Ring, followed by a Jeweled Lotus, and then recasts his commander, the Fractal Theorist. On Jordan's turn, he plays an Ancient Tomb, and then casts 1000-Year Elixir. He then passes. On end step, Ryan attempts to Cyclonic Rift the Cursed Totem, but Colin responds with Mana Drain, countering the Cyclonic Rift. Ryan starts his turn off by playing a Marsh Flats and cracking it for a Plains. He then casts Ristic Studies, followed by a Back to Basics. He then attempts to cast Windfall, but Nash responds by Cyclonic Rifting the Back to Basics to his hand. Ryan gets 21 treasures off his Smothering Tide and uses them to recast his commander. He then polymorphs his commander, hitting Hullbreaker Horror. He plays a Mox Diamond, discarding his Misty Rainforest as cost, and recasts his commander once again. He then Whir of Inventions X0 to get LED into play. He then demonstrates an infinite loop whereby he cracks LED, then taps his Copy Artifacted land in order to activate his commander's ability, returning the Copy Artifact to hand to re-get the LED. He then plays the Copy Artifact again and is left with +1 mana in pool, giving him unlimited Hullbreaker Horror triggers and unlimited mana. He then, using the unlimited mana and the copy artifacted land, recurs all enchantments and artifacts from his graveyard, and the entire table concedes upon the recursion of Back to Basics.